My name is Aaron Sylvester, and I'm the founder and chocolate maker and cocoa farmer at Tri-Island Chocolate. Welcome to the Spice Basket. We're going to take you in so you can learn a little bit about our wonderful experience where you'll learn about cocoa and nutmeg at the Spice Basket. So what we have here is we've conceived an experience for people to learn and understand about how we use our cocoa and how we use our nutmeg, and really more importantly how these things are harvested and grown, because there's a lot of misconceptions about that, and this experience takes you through all of the steps from the tree all the way through to harvesting the nutmeg. And the same around the other side here, we do the same with explaining to you how we harvest the cocoa pods and take you through the entire process to how we then make chocolate. So this is a real tree to bar experience on the chocolate side and a real rootsy experience on the nutmeg side. And all of this in this purpose-built facility, which will give you a real immersive experience. You may not be able to go to the farms to see this, so we wanted to bring a little bit of the farm to you here at the Spice Basket, where you get to really understand about the culture of the island, where we have some music. We have our steel pan wizards playing. You then get to taste some chocolate, where we take you on a whole chocolate immersive experience. You get to taste 5 different chocolates from the 5 chocolate companies that we have on the island. As some of you will know, Grenada is the smallest country in the world with the most chocolate factories. We have 5, all making chocolate from the tree to the bar. And after that, there's some cultural music and dancing by traditional dancers here for people to enjoy. So if you follow me, I'm just going to show you a little bit about what we do with the nutmeg process. So we start here with the nutmeg tree that we have, pretty much a perennial. So we would basically harvest the nutmeg that's on the tree. We would take the nutmeg that we have. We then use our wonderful picker, which would allow us to then take the nutmeg off the tree. Once we basically harvested the nutmeg off the tree, we then would separate it from the actual nutmeg from the pericarp. So what we would do is we have the nutmeg, we would separate it from the pericarp. This is a dried version, but you can kind of get the idea. Normally it's nice and round like a large golf ball and yellow, just like you see in these designs. We would then separate the 2 parts. Inside we would then end up with the nutmeg, and nutmeg would then have the mace on the outside. And this here is an example of that mace. That would be a lace around the outside of the nutmeg. We would separate those 2. So the mace would then dry. We'll leave that to sun dry for a number of days. Then you would then crack the actual nutmeg itself. So you have the shell, which is used for many, many paths, for pavings, because it's a wonderful, one, it's a wonderful weed suppressant, and 2, it makes a wonderful pathway, which can definitely let you know if any intruders are entering your property. Once we basically have that, we would then crack it open, as I mentioned, to separate the shell from the nutmeg. Then it needs to be floated, and at this point you then work out if it's grade 1 or grade 2 or grade 3 nutmeg, and that's, people pay different prices based on the quality of the nutmeg. Once we've done the grading, we would then dry the nutmeg to remove any of the moisture from this water bath, so it's completely dry, so we don't create any bacterial issues or any moisture or any mold. Once it's completely dry, then you get to the point where you would then process the nutmeg itself into whatever the third-party product you might want to do. So for us it might be nutmeg jam, nutmeg jelly, could be nutmeg syrup, could be nutmeg oil, or it could be nutmeg for sprains and issues with arthritis. So that's just a small array of the different types of uses of this wonderful nutmeg that we have. If you follow me on the back side, I will then show you what we do with our cocoa. So as you can see, we've basically covered the inside here also with palm prongs, so it has a real immersive experience, because we can't bring you to the farm, so we've done our best to bring the farm to you. So once we've done that, we kind of covered it with bamboo rods, and then covered that with palm prongs. Then what we have here is where we take you through the cocoa part. So we have the cocoa tree. That cocoa tree pretty much takes between 4 and 6 years to really get to its full maturity. Typically you maybe get between 40 to 50 pods per tree, if you're really, really lucky. And inside each of these pods there'll be beans or seeds, and inside the pod there's about 30 to 40 seeds or beans inside each of those. What we would then do is we would then harvest that using the cocoa knife, like in this image here, or we would use the cutlass to get the pods that are nearer the ground off. Once we've harvested them off the tree, we would then crack them open. So using the cutlass, we would crack those pods open. We would scoop the beans that are inside out, and then we then put them in a pile. Once we've got them all out of those pods, we would then put them into here, where we would then ferment them. And this is a fermentation box. And this is a process that takes 7 days. We would place, first we would empty the box. We would put the beans inside. Once the beans are inside, they'd come up to a certain height. We'd then cover them with banana leaves. Once we've covered them with banana leaves, we then cover them with a burlap sack. And once that's covered, we would leave it there for 7 days, and it would get exceptionally hot. Up to 45 Celsius is really what we want it to get to, so we can get the beans to turn to the right level of fermentation quality is what we would need. We would leave them for 7 days. On the 2nd, 4th, and 6th day, we'd mix those beans up to make sure that they weren't getting any mold in any corner, and we're moving the left to the right and the beans from the top to the bottom. So each, the 2nd, 4th, and 6th day, you'd do that mix. And that would make sure that the fermentation is across the entire box, not just in one area. Once those beans have been completely and well fermented, you would cut the bean in half to make sure that it's got the right ridges that would show you that it's been fermented correctly. Once it's been fermented correctly, we put them in here, as this is a small version of a cocoa dryer or cocoa shed. We would place the beans inside here, just like we have here. We would leave them in there for another 7 days to completely dry. And during that time, what we're trying to do is remove all of the moisture that was on the juice on those cocoa beans during the fermentation to be completely eradicated. And once we've got all that moisture out, we would turn those beans every hour or so across those 7 days. Once they're completely dry, we would then take them out. And sometimes there might be some rain that's coming, so we'd have to make sure that the reason why you use cocoa drawers is because if the rain comes, you can push that drawer in, wait for the rain to pass, then you can push that drawer back out to make sure the beans never get wet. Because if the beans get wet, they ultimately get ruined and they become moldy, and then it's never going to make great cocoa, and it's never going to make great chocolate. So once we've basically done that in terms of drying those beans, we then bag them up. Then we go through and sort them, and we sort those beans, taking the not so good beans, the flat beans, the cracked beans, the ones that have maybe got insects inside. We separate those ones, and those ones would not be used. We would then bag up the rest that are good beans and use those to then sell on to buyers of cocoa beans internationally, or we would use it locally and we would then turn it into our own chocolate, use it for cocoa balls, use it to make cocoa tea, use it to make cocoa powder, and or press the cocoa bean itself to get cocoa butter. And all of that would take place and happen from one simple bean that has multiple uses. So here we have just some of the artifacts that we have in the room. So for example, we have it's a basic scale that would have been used and it still is used for weighing cocoa. You'd basically attach that to your burlap sack, and then it would tell you how much the weight is of your wet cocoa or your dry cocoa. We then have the good old file, which is used to sharpen the cutlass. So this is the file, and then you would literally go through and file that to get that sharp, so it allows you to have a sharp tool to do the work that you need to do on the farm. We also have pruning shears, and these would be used just to keep the cocoa trees in check, because sometimes there's suckers that would come off that tree, and you want to just make sure that those leaves or those shoots that aren't going to be giving you cocoa pods are controlled and cut down, so the energy of the tree is used to actually give you pods and doesn't get distracted by growing new shoots that aren't going to give you any actual cocoa at the end. And then lastly, we have the boots. You know, for any good farmer, you need your water boots or your Wellington boots to make sure that you can get across the farm easily and well. And then from there, a few more last items that we have here. We have our lovely spades, which are always in handy because they come in handy when you have large amounts of cocoa and you need to turn that cocoa. So you can use that spade to turn it and get the wet cocoa to the top, and make sure you're doing it during those turns that I mentioned earlier about the 2nd, the 4th, and the 6th turns that you do during the fermentation. This is a traditional old school scale that we have here. What you would have done is you would have dropped your cocoa sacks on there, and it would have given you a very quick reading of how much your cocoa, wet cocoa or your dry cocoa is worth, so you had it for your records. And then lastly, we have a basket down here which is what you would do is you'd use that basket to pick up wet cocoa and transport it across the farm. Inside it has nutmegs in this case, but typically you would use it for nutmeg, or you'd use it for actual cocoa, wet cocoa beans. So I hope you've enjoyed our experience. I hope you got to learn lots about Grenadian cocoa, Grenadian nutmeg, and our culture. If you want to learn more about our Tri-Island and Spice Basket experience, you can visit us at triisland.com, where you can learn about different experiences that we offer, from chocolate, from honey, to the wonderful experience we offer here at the Spice Basket. So triisland.com, and we're available on all good social media platforms.